Maseches Horayos. This is a new week for everybody here. Vav Amud Aleph in Maseches Horayos. We're in Daf Vav Amud Aleph in the third wide line. Really, today's Amud is Vav Amud Beis. It's Vav Amud Beis, but we are still in Vav Amud Aleph in the third wide line. Before we read, and this year's Leilun Nishmas of Imor Menachem Nakiva Rus Bas Sholem Soro Bas Moshe Besorch Leilun Nishmas, not Besorch. Well, first call Chol Yisrael. We are in the third wide line. Tonu Abonon. We're starting today to learn a new Mishnah, Brisa. Excuse me. No. This is a Brisa, and this Brisa will be. It's a very very short Brisa, which will be examined and tossed over many times. If you listen to my introduction with a few important items that you have to know, then as usual everything will go smooth. I'll read the Brisa, then I'll give the introduction, and then we'll continue. Bezos Hashem. Tonu Abonon. Meis echod min hatzibur. One person died from the tzibur. Let's say, I'm not saying exactly when that happened, after the idea, but let's say we know, actually Rashbam says over here, Meis echod min hatzibur. Interesting. Rashbam says the Beis Din did not yet bring the Korban, and one of the people died. Even after the idea, they're about to bring the Korban. They realized that they sinned. What do you mean sinned? That they misled the Tzibur. The Tzibur followed them erroneously. We have to bring the Korban. But one of the people in Eretz Yisrael died. Well, people die, One person died. You go to the hospital, you see Azaros Kohanim, Lolin, someone died. They still have, the show must go on. They still have to bring the Korban. However, Echad mi Beis Din, if one of the 71 Dayanim died, then Pturin, then they're Potur. That's a Brisa. This is the Brisa which you have to know by heart. Just remember, have it in your mind. I almost printed it as a chart, but I relied on your intelligence. We say Echad min Tzibur Chayovin, which means one of the Tzibur died, they still have to bring the Korban. Remember that? If one person from Beis Din died before they brought the Korban, they don't bring the Korban. Now, before we go on into analyzing all that, you have to know two things. Fact number one, what happens if a person, forget about Tzibur, Beis Din, what happens if a person turned on the light on Shabbos because he thought it was Friday, and then he realized he got the excuse upon light bulb moment, and now he knows that he sinned. Now what does he have to do? Bring a personal, just him, nothing to do with Beis Din, no big public scandals. What does he have to do? Bring one Korban called Chatas, Yochid, a little female, not little, whatever, female shepsel, female sheep, all very nice, go to marry. Now, what do we say? What happens if he died? He himself died. The person died. And now the Korban was already dedicated. He already went to the market or to his backyard, and he designated that white little sheep with the black mark on it, whatever that one, she's already chatos. She's the one chatos. He died. What do you do with that? So now we have Exeris Akosu, we have a Lochel Mishim Sinai that says that there are 5 types of chatois that have to die. Not exactly the nicest death. You have to put them in a closed room, whatever, and they just have to die. What are those 5 chatos? We'll see it in Amud Beis. One of them is chatos shemeisu be'oleho. A chatos that the Bailim died, nobody can reuse it. His children don't bring it for him, as the heirs, as people responsible for their dead father. What happens? The chatos has to die. What happens? The same applies to 4 other chatos. Chatos shemeisu be'oleho, sheniskapu be'oleho. Let's say, I'll give you another story because I want to make a full introduction. The more you listen now, the easier things will be later. What happens, the second scenario? What happens if a person designated, was Makdish, let's speak normal. He was Makdish, he dedicated the Beis HaMikdash, that sheep, and that sheep was gone. He went to the pen the morning after, the sheep is gone. She knows she's going to be shechted, she ran away. And then he took another one, he had kapora, shechted, went to Beis HaMikdash. Lo and behold, the day after, he comes home, and he comes home, that's not good for Beis HaMikdash. He comes home, a new version, what do you do now? He was already miskaper. he was already atoned for by another korban. Now this one is redundant, jumping around. You can't do anything with it. It's kaddish. Same thing. You have to take it to a closed room, and it has to die. That's the case about 5 chatos. So if somebody died or somebody already got kapora, the chatos has to die. What happens if it's not a chatos? Let's say it's osham or other things. Then you let it graze until until it gets a mum, a blemish, naturally. So it runs around in the field and scratches itself against some kind of shrapnel, and then you redeem it for another korban. We're not going down that lane right now. You just have to know it in general. That's all. That's introduction number 1. So let's remember, introduction number 1. If a chatos, a person died, a little bit like we're understanding now, the people died, somebody has to bring the korban, died, then the chatos has to die. Also, now what happens? You don't kill it, you just let it die naturally. What happens now if that's number 1? That's what you have to know. Another thing we have to know, in this Gemara we're going to see 3 levels of groups of ownership. We spoke last week about the fact that a tzibur, a kahal, a whole congregation, they never die. Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai. In other words, what do we say? Even if some people from the Jewish nation died, Lamais, you can still bring a korban, right? The korban, you can bring a korban by Sheni for the chet of Bais Rishon. True? As long as, right? Because why? Because it's tzibur as the whole, a kahal, remember the word kahal, they cannot actually be considered halachically dead. That's when it's kahal. Kahal never dies. What happens when one person dies? Yochid, a yochid, he can die. Unfortunately, people do die, last time I checked. And what happens then? Well, no, the chatas has to die as well. There's a third group in the middle. There are 3 groups. The middle group is shutfin. What happens when a smaller group of people bring a korban? What happens then? Are they considered like a kahal, or are they considered like an individual? I think it's time to start. Let's now start, and slowly but surely we'll see everything. Tana Abanon. One person from the entire nation died. Chayovin, they still have to bring the korban. One person from Beis Din died, then they're potul. What do you mean they're potul? They don't have to bring the korban. A person from Beis Din died, then it's keilu, there's death here. It's like the owner died. Once the owner died, then they're potter from bringing. Well, be with the chatas, probably dies as well. That's it. The show doesn't go on. The chayiv person died, which is Beis Din. There's a small group that are actually chayiv in the korban. They died, or one of them even died. It's one organ of the whole body that died. It's as if one individual person died. When a person died, his korban is not brought. You cannot bring korbanos for dead people, for dead individuals. And Beis Din are like an individual. And therefore, if they died, or even one of them, that's it. You don't bring the korban. The question is, Mantana, who is the author of that brisa? Who said that? Amar Chizda, Amar Bizera, Amar Virmia, Amar Rav. These are 3 people, one after the other, ending up quoting Rav. Rabbi Meir, very easy. We know it was Rabbi Meir, like Rabbi Yosef said before. Yeah, who are the owners of the korban exclusively? Who? For Rabbi Meir, Beis Din. Beautiful. Rabbi Meir, the Omar, Beis Din Mevim, V'lo tzibur. Beis Din are the bailim. They are the owners of the korban, not the tzibur. They're the ones supposed to bring. Hilkach, therefore, easy peasy. Meis echad min tzibur chayovin. If one of the tzibur died, who cares? I mean, I feel bad for the family that he died. Not nice to say who cares, I know. But Lamaisa, the Beis Din still have to bring. The show must go on. Deha, line starts with the word Deha. Da'kaim kula Beis Din, because the Beis Din are there, and the Beis Din are the ones chayv the korban. They chayv because the tzibur sinned, but the tzibur are not the owners of the korban, and therefore, as long as Beis Din are alive, even if 1 or 2 or 3 people from the tzibur died, yes, could be even a lot of people died. The Beis Din be'etzem were mischayev, and they're the owners. They have to bring the korban because they're the sole owners. However, continues the Gemara, Masechet Beis Din. If one of Beis Din died, that's a different story. Pturin, they don't have to bring the korban anymore. Because this is a chatas in which one of the partners, shutafina partners, died. Pturin, that's what the potter. This is assumption number 1. This is one way of reading the brisa. Very, very, very simple, very easy. That's an easy start. If Beis Din, one of them died, This is a chatas of shutfin. What does shutfin mean? Here, halacha requires a small group of people. 71 is a closed circle, specific group of people, a clique of people who have to bring the korban. One of them died. Well, then they're considered as the owner died. One of the owners died. You don't bring. What about the rest? I don't know, but that's it. One died. It's kilu, the organism died. Now, if the tzibur died, I'm very sad that the guy died, but he's not the owner of the korban. He's not the owner. So, of course, Beis Din go on with the show and continue to bring that. That's the easy one. I now want to actually say something, B'Shem Rashi. There is no chatas of shutfin. It's a very misleading word, and Rashban does this of Rashi. I still say Rashban because of Basra. Rashi says, if you turn on the light on Shabbos, chas v'sholem, by mistake, and I ate blood sausage by mistake, yeah, or even if I turn on the light on Shabbos also, we cannot partner in the chatos. You have to remember that. We cannot go, take a ride. It's, you bring a chatos, I'll bring along. This is not a ride to Har Chotzvim. This is not something you do together. When we say Chatas Shutfin, it's only when the Torah prescribes it. We'll see other examples later. The Torah says that a small group of people, namely Beis Din, all have to bring together. The Torah says they are partners in crime, so to speak. They're partners in the Korban. And if one of them died, that's it. Nisparka hachavila, the package is already, that's it. Everything is dissolved into nothing, and you don't bring the Korban anymore. That's one way of understanding it. And who's that? Rabbi Meir. That's one way. I'm actually open for questions because now we're going into the roller coaster, a nice ride. So if you want, you can ask questions now. Time for questions. Now we're going to have a bit of a give and take between two opinions, Abai and Rav Yosef. Maskif Rav Yosef, 5 lines from the bottom of the page. Maskif Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef attacks Rav, or those quoting Rav. V'nukma ki Rabbi Shimon. Why do you have to say Rabbi Meir is the author of the Brisa? We can say it's Rabbi Shimon. Listen how. De'omar, Beis Din ima tzibur. What did Rabbi Shimon say? How many owners, according to Rabbi Shimon, are there to the Korban? 2. 70 or 71, that's one body, the Beis Din, and the people. Two groups, not 2 people. 2 groups. So you know what? Maybe Beis Din and the Tzibur, they're both owners. However, there's a difference. You know why? When one of the Tzibur, or even a few of the Tzibur are still chayev, the ain't Tzibur Mesim. We saw before, on behalf of Rav Papa, he said what? The Tzibur never dies. A kahal, congregation, people, they never die. That's why. Really, the Tzibur are the owners. Elamai, because being tzibur means that they never die. Yeah, that's why. However, Masechet mi Beis Din pturim. But if one of Beis Din died and are patur, kidamrinan, as we said, the chatas shutfin. This is Rav Yosef's suggestion, which you have to know because this is going to keep popping back and forth. Rav Yosef suggests the follows. He says the following, like this. He says like this. Really, this could be Rav Shimon. This is Rav Yosef saying, "Hey, I vote for Rabbi Shimon. Vote." I vote for Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon could be the author of the Brisa. Why? Rabbi Shimon will tell you like this. Who are the owners? Beis Din and the Tzibur. But there's a huge difference. Beis Din are a few individuals, 71. Therefore, if one of them died, it's like an individual, like one person. If one person died, we said the Chatas is not being brought to the Korban, right? As a Korban. That's why if one of them died, it's like a person got a heart attack, but all the rest of the body is still alive. His heart is not functioning. Thank you. It's like 71 hearts. The Beis Din is not alive. But Shenken, but the Tzibur, one of them died, or even a few of them died. And here, I don't know your question, but let's say some of them died. Then they are a Tzibur. Didn't we say the beautiful words that Tzibur never dies? That's it. That's why. They are the owners. But the death is not a death halachically, because you still have some of them around, right? Maybe even mute. I don't know how many. Here, I hear you more. I don't know. But Lamaisa, the Tzibur never dies. That's it. Very good. So that could be Rabbi Shimon, perfect. If Shutfim are considered like one person, and therefore the Chatas is not being brought. If one dies, the Chatas is not brought. The Tzibur, if they died, it's not really called that they died, because the nation is still around. Somebody is still around. What? In other words, at this point we assume, that Shutfim are like one person. Shutfim, just like if one Reuven would die, would say that his chat is not brought. So Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, and their other 71 friends, are also like a bunch of individuals, and therefore, if one of them dies, you don't bring it. That's what Rav Yosef assumes, and therefore he attacks Rav. Okay? I think as we go along, you'll get Amala Abaye, comes Abaye, it's all going to be Rav Yosef versus Abaye. Amala Abaye, Abaye has all different take. And he says, no. I'll tell you, my dear Rav, you know Abaye was a Talmud of Rav Yosef. Abaye is addressing his rabbi and he says, Shami'ina al-Rab Shimon, we know that Rab Shimon, we know, we have inside information about Rab Shimon, the Omar, Chatas Shutfin Eina Meisa. Rabbi Shimon, says that if a group of individuals that halachically have to bring together a sheep, or not sheep, any korban, if one of them dies, they're not considered like individuals and the korban is not brought. They're considered as a whole nation, as a whole kahal, and therefore their korban will not die. Get what I'm saying? You should now have a chart in your minds with 3 boxes, my friends. Box number 1 is kahal. Kahal, tzibur, the whole nation never dies. Even if some people died, you still bring the korban. Box number 3, the other extreme, one guy, one little piskala guy, one guy, one individual, one woman. What about them? If they die, the korban is not brought. The discussion is about the middle case. What happens to a small group? A small group that the Torah says, you small group, you based in, what happens to them? If one of them dies, Rav Yosef assumed that's considered like what? Like one person dying. So they don't bring the korban. Says Abai, no. Rabbi Shimon holds, particularly Rabbi Shimon holds, that if one of a small group dies, you still bring the korban. That's why the Brisa cannot be Rabbi Shimon, because the Brisa said that Beis Din do not bring the korban. That's, in a nutshell, the entire shiur of today. Around that, we're going to revolve back and forth. Remember, have it nailed in your minds. But no nails, it hurts, yeah? Yeah. In other words, how do you view a shutfim? How do you view a group of 71 or a group of 500, a group of one prescribed number of people that the Torah says have to bring a korban, and some of them died? Do you say, they died? That's it. No korban, like one guy. Or do we say no? Do we say that small group is like a group? A group is like a whole organic body of many people, and therefore, even if some of them died and the others survived, we still bring the korban. That is the name of the game. Abai is of the opinion. No questions for the next few minutes, please. Oh, no, not Shach. Please. Yeah, now comes the Gemara and says, Rabbi believes Rabbi Shimon cannot be the author of a Brisa. Our Brisa said that the small group called Beis Din, they don't bring. Rabbi Shimon believes, no, that the small group is considered like a whole nation. And if some of them died, the rest do bring. And I'll prove it to you, the Tanya. He'll prove it to us from yesterday's Parsha, which we read yesterday in Parshas Shavua, Parshas Achrei Mos. The Tanya. Par v'seir shel Yom Kippurim. 2 of the korbanos brought on Yom Kippur, and these are the 2 korbanos that are brought to Kodesh Kadoshim, the holiest of the holiest of the holiest of the holiest. The par, what is the par? Who brings the par? The Kohen Gadol, representing who? The Kohanim. Nicht the Kohanim. Kohanim, last time I checked, are not a whole nation. They're a group. Right? How many people go to Duchan? I don't know, 5% of the shul on a good day. The Seir is for the whole nation. Shilom Kippurim. Look, listen to what happened. She'avdu. The Par and the Seir of Yom Kippur got lost. They ran away. They got lost. They hid in the cowshed. And then the Hifrish Acherim Tachteim. So he says, the Kohen Gadol says, Vos kenichtong, what can I do? I'll bring another Par and another Seir. And then you know what happened? They found the original ones. The Par V'Seir came home, not last year, Chas v'Shalom, L'Havdil. They came back home. And now what do? You're stuck now with 2 chatois. What about them? That you have nothing to do with. Yamusu kulan divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, even though the Seir belongs to the entire nation, they die. Meaning he sees even the whole nation as somebody that the par should die, as opposed to the Seir should die, as opposed to everything we've seen so far. But we're not discussing Rabbi Yehuda now. Just to avoid confusion, leave Rabbi Yehuda out of the equation. Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Shimon, who's the star of the show today? Rabbi Shimon. We're trying to find out what's Rabbi Shimon's opinion. You know what he says? Oimer yiru. They do not die. What happens to them? Yiru ad shistavu. They should really graze until they have a blemish in them, and then you redeem them. Lefi she'en chatas tzibur meisa. Wow, you know why? The halacha of a chatas of tzibur that dies, if one guy died, his chatas dies along, we don't kill it, but you let it die, that is only by one person, but a group of people, even a small group like the Kohanim, not so small, but a group of Kohanim, represented by the par, their par does not die. And therefore, in our case, in Beis Din, if some people from Beis Din died, then what happens then? Same thing. A small group, if their chatas die, if they died, the chatas still must be brought. Over there in Yom Kippur, you say that the chatas itself has to graze and get some blemish because there's nothing to do with it. Yom Kippur is over. You can't keep it for next year, for next Yom Kippur. You know why not? Because you're not allowed to bring money, an old korban with new money. You can't switch a korban from year to year, to reject it, to postpone it from year to year. But in our case, we just don't have to bring the korban. Finished. And therefore, in our case, Rabbi Shimon would say that if some of the Dayanim died, the other Dayanim should bring the korban. Why shouldn't they get the kapara? You say because one died, who cares one died? He sees the group as a whole nation. And the whole nation, the whole kahal, what happens to the whole kahal? The whole kahal is somebody that never dies, meaning the chatas is not doesn't die and should be brought. Therefore, our brisa that says that Beis Din don't bring the korban is not true according to Reb Shimon, because Reb Shimon will tell you that Kohanim are like Beis Din. Any small group, Kohanim, Beis Din, or any other halachic group that has to bring together, you know what they're viewed like? They are viewed like the kahal. They're viewed like the whole nation, and therefore if some of them died, the rest bring the korban. Okay? That is a baya. Very, very crucial here. Okay? Omel Rav Yosef, soon I'll hear questions, but now let Rav Yosef reply, and that will be really the end of the foundations of the discussion, and then I'll repeat it. I don't know how much. Yeah, let's repeat it. Omel Rav Yosef, last line. Koyanim come out. You bringing me a proof from Koyanim? What is that? It's chalk and cheese. What does one have to do with the other? Shiny Koyanim, the Kukol. The Koyanim specifically, they have special status, super duper. They're called Kohol. The Chtiv ala Koyanim, al kol amakal, lichaper. Yeah, it says he should bring kapara for the Koyanim, and amakahal, which means it's a hekesh. By the way, you can turn the page if you want. Yeah, a hekesh kahal is juxtaposed with Koyanim. And therefore, by them, there's a special exception. Kohanim, they're called the nation on their own. Oh, chashuveh. They're called kahal. And therefore, I agree with you. The Reb Shimon would say that Kohanim, that their Yom Kippur korban got lost and found, and this and that. By them, we say, yes, the chatas doesn't die because they're called the kahal. But do not, my friend, says Rav Yosef to Abai, don't compare and start reflecting and applying it to Beis Din. Mapitom, Beis Din are not called kahal. As opposed to what we said before, maybe Beis Din is called kahal for those purposes, bringing the korban, but they're not called the whole nation or whole tribe. They're much smaller. Beis Din don't have that special status of a whole tzibur, a whole kahal that never dies. And therefore, I believe Rabbi Shimon can be the author of the brisa. Rabbi Shimon will tell you that Beis Din are like individuals. Let's review from a different angle. Again, there was a brisa. Once upon a time, there was a brisa. We are now involved Amud Beis, and we are summarizing the beginning of the sugya so far. The brisa states, my friends, there's one brisa, and we're trying to find out, to search in Google and find out who is the author of the brisa. Who let the brisa out? Who is the one who wrote the brisa? What did the brisa say? That if one of the nation died, the show must go on. Everyone agrees to that. The people, they're not the owners, bring the korban. What happens if one of Beis Din, 1 out of 71, that's a very small percentage, if he dies, the korban is not brought. Korban is not brought. We wanted to say, well, who is it? It's Amel. Amel says that the Kohanim, that the Beis Din are the owners. If the owner died, you don't bring the korban. The chatas dies. Very nice. You just don't bring the chatas. Finished. Now, came Abai and Rav Yosef and started discussing. Rav Yosef said, wait a second, I can say it's Reb Shimon. And I'll tell you, you know what? The Beis Din are the owners of the korban. I know that they're the owners. But you know why they don't have to bring the korban? Well, the tzibur has to bring the korban. Both Beis Din and the tzibur are owners, but the Beis Din don't have to bring the korban because they're a small group. A small group, if one of them dies, it's like the owner died. It's like one individual who died. You don't bring the korban, right? But the whole tzibur, Am Yisrael Chai, if one of them died, or even 40% of them died, or 45%, still we say you bring the korban. Now came a discussion. Abai said, no. Wait a second. I know Reb Shimon says that the Kohanim on Yom Kippur, if their korban gets lost, then we don't say that the chatas should die. Because you see, he says, because Reb Shimon views any small group as a group that is considered to be the kahal. And therefore, if one guy out of a group of 10, 20, 30 that all have to bring a korban together, if one of them died, it's considered as if, no, it's still a kahal, and the show must go on. And therefore, the Brisa cannot be Reb Shimon. Says Rabbi Yosef, no, my friend, it's only true about kohanim. Special, super duper prerogative for kohanim. They're considered to be a tzibur, because there's a pasuk. Yeah, it says the kohanim, the ama kahal, kohanim and kahal together. But stam a group of bezin, they're not called kahal. They're called stam individuals that happen to be together. If they're like one guy, if one individual dies, what do we say? We say in Chinami that it's one individual, and therefore they don't bring the korban. And the brisa could be Reb Shimon. Questions? Baruch, what's your question? Frag the Gemara. Now the Gemara asks a question in Amud Beis. Elamata, according to what you're telling me now, that the Beis Din are considered as what? As not Beis Din, that the Kohanim are called Kahal, Elamatu, Neisupar Be'oiro. Wait a second, if so, the Kohanim, if the Kohanim sinned, and you call them Kahal, according to Reb Shimon, then the Kohanim, who are Shevet Levi, they should be considered Kahal to bring a korban. What happens if Shevet Levi alone sinned? And what do we say? We say that according to Rabbi Shimon, every Shevet that sinned has to bring his own bull. If so, would you say that the Kohanim are also considered like a Shevet and they have to bring their own bull? Is that so? V'chitema hachinami. And if you say, yes, you say, yes, they are. Hadarabba, yes, maybe the Kohanim are considered as Shevet Levi, lump them together with Shevet Levi, and say, Shevet Levi, yes, they are Shevet, and you bring a korban. If so, now we come to the question which I promised you many times, the Remez, we're going to discuss. Let me ask you a question. How many tribes are there in Israel? Don't think I'm stupid or asking you Kita of questions. How many Shvatim are there in the Jewish nation? Officially 12, but really 13. It's always a discussion in the Rabban at the end of the Chumash. It's always a question, how do you come out to 12 when you really have 13? Excuse me, even I know how to count 13. Why? Because if you considered Shevet Levi, and you also considered Menashe and Ephraim, then you have 13, because Yosef's divided to 2. If you look at all of them together, Menashe and Ephraim and Levi, then you are stuck with one extra one. Like the cruel game you play in Gan of what? Of musical chairs. And therefore, you always have to take out one Shevet. There's one incident to do out Shimon, right? When Moshe gave brachas, right? And Shimon was kilu lapped up with the dad, Shimon Velevi, in other words, it was Merumas, Shimon was not Bekitzer, you always have to take out one. Now, Frag the Gemara, Tofi lehu shvatim, Tafi means there are too many. If you considered him, Levi, and all other 12, then why did the Mishnah say that the maximum is how many? 12 plus 1. It should be 13 plus 1, should be 14. Elam Ravacha Bar Yaakov, says Ravacha Bar Yaakov, Shivcha Shalevi, Lo Ikru Kol. Oh, okay, we retract, we go back. Shevet Levi is not Kahal. Shevet Levi is really not Kahal, and the Kohanim are not Kahal either. The Kohanim are not Kahal. Dichtiv, how do we know they're not called Kahal? And I'm reading now the whole pasuk. It says when Yaakov quotes what Hashem told him, it says, it says, Yaakov said, you know what Hashem told me? I'll give you a kahal, a lot of kahal, and I'll give you a chuzah, settlement, and I'll give you the rights to live in Eretz Yisrael. Says the Brisa, Kol sheyesh lo achuzah ikri kol. Those who have an achuzah, those who have a settlement, they have a portion in Eretz Yisrael are called kahal. The kol she'en lo achuzah lo ikri kahal. Those who don't have a piece of land in Eretz Yisrael are not called kahal. Levi are very choshuv tzadikim gdolim beis hamikdash, but kahal wise, they're not called kahal precisely because they don't have a part in Eretz Yisrael. They're scattered around 48 different cities all over the place. They don't have their own piece of land that's very clearly demarcated, and therefore they're not called kahal. If so, you have too few, you have too little, you don't have enough. You have 12, you don't have 12. Amar Abaye, here comes the obvious answer, which I already hinted to before. Ephraim and Menashe, ki Reuven v'Shimon yuli. Another statement of Yaakov, the one who decided who's a tribe and who's not. He's saying very nicely, the famous pasuk he says to Yosef, you should know your children, Ephraim and Menashe, will be for me like Reuven v'Shimon. Meaning what? They consider the Shevet, just like Reuven and Shimon are no question. It's not questionable that they're Shevet on their own. So too, Ephraim and Menashe are Shevet on their own. So Levi is out, and Ephraim and Menashe are in. You have 12, but still Levi is out. Omar Rove, is that so? It says, Vaksiv al Shem Achim Yirkou ben Achalosom. You read the pasuk? Read the whole pasuk. It says here, I'm showing with a cursor, Yirkou ben Achalosom. They should be called their own nachla. They have their own portion in the land, like Reuven v'Shimon. What does that come to be medayek or exclude? Lenachala hukshu. In other words, Ephraim and Menashe and Ephraim are considered as two Shvatim only to get double portion, not double, I mean each one getting a portion, which is a double for Yosef. And that's what, remember Basra? Yosef is like a Bechor in a way. Why? He gets double. Ephraim and Menashe. That's when it comes to gelt, to land. For that they're considered like two separate Shvatim, but not for Par. When it comes to bringing different Parim, for example, which is our issue, they're not considered like Parim, like separate bulls to be brought. And therefore, who is the one? Levi. If Levi is called a Kahal, that is now reflecting on Mechlokes Abaye of Yosef, right? Now we see Levi is a Kahal, because Ephraim and Asher are not. They're only one, right? So Levi is the 12th passenger here, Levi. So Levi is called Kahal. If Levi is called Kahal, so the Levim are called Kahal, but not necessarily Beis Din, right? Veloy, frag the Gemara, are you sure that Menashe and Ephraim are not considered different Shvatim, separate for other matters, only for portions in Eretz Yisrael? In a few weeks from now, we're all going to read the weekly portion in the book of Numbers, right? Bamidbar is Numbers, that's right word. What does it say there? That around the Mishkan, how many Shvatim camped and walked around the Mishkan? On each faction there were, the 12 divided to 4 is 3. Did you know that? You came here to listen to such news. You come here to learn high math. Forget about Oxford and Cambridge. There were, It's a count with your fingers, you'll find out. Which around the Mishkan, they were very good. There were 4 groups, 4 encampments, each one of 3. Last time I checked, one of them was with Menashe and Ephraim, right? Menashe and Ephraim were there in the second one. And therefore, you see they're not considered two only for Nachla, also for the encampment and walking in the Midbar, in the desert. So maybe also they're considered as 2 different Shvatim for bringing a Pang, for being considered a Kahal for the purpose of the amounts of Parim, and it's them. And again, it's not Levi, it's always a Siso. Is it them who are the extra Shevet, or is it Levi? Says the Gemara, no, that's, don't make a big deal out of how they walked in the Midbar. Why? No. Which means, really, when Yaakov Avinu decided how they're going to walk around in the Mishkan, in the Midbar around the Mishkan, it was Yaakov, the way that they were standing around his bed when he was about to die, his deathbed, was the same way that they accompanied the Mishkan. The Mishkan represents Yaakov Avinu himself, and therefore he said, you are positioned here and you're deployed over here that way, which means the way they walk in the Mishkan is a reflection of the Nachala. In other words, he said, you're going to get Nachala in Eretz Yisrael, location. In Eretz Yisrael, you're located in different places, around my bed and also in the Mishkan. But it does not mean, it doesn't mean really that they are considered as 2 Shvatim for other purposes. For example, for bringing the Korban of our Korban we discussed. And also, Kedei, we're continuing the Gemara, Kedei Lechalek Koved L'Dgolim, to give respect to the Dgolim, which means you have to have an even amount of Dgolim, of flags, and encampments around the Mishkan. So to have an even number, we had to stick in another Shevet. Because where was Levi? In the Mishkan, around the Mishkan, in the inner circle, right? That inner ring, so to speak, around the Mishkan. Gilshan Katlu, Gilshan Katlu and Moshe Nar was in the front, near Reuven, right? Not near Reuven, excuse me, in the front near Yehuda. So then what? And also, okay, so that's the reason. So don't tell me now that they're considered the two shvatim for everything. They're only considered the two shvatim for staying in Eretz Israel, where they got different pieces of land, and the location in the Midbar. That's all. But other than that, when it comes to everyday life, if there's a mistake by Bezin, or as you said, by the Shevet, they're not considered a separate Shevet. Yeah, Reuven, Menashe and Ephraim are one Shevet, and Levi are one Shevet, and Levi is one Kohol, which is reflecting on the banner of Yosef. Frag the Gemara about Chalukim Benesim. Excuse me, don't tell me, no, they're one Shevet and they happen to be divided into two. Yeah, like, B'Shemesh, Ramat B'Shemesh, two locations, one town. Yeah, it's not. No, they are really different because they have different Nisim. Then they have different what? Nasi, different leader. I don't say president because that's what it means. Yeah, they have different leaders to each group. Yeah, each one had a different Nasi. And says the Gemara, no. Over there, it's a different Inyan. Once we have two groups that are located in different places, we want to give covered. We don't want to be mevayish. We don't want to shame the group and say you have your own leader. But that leader is just an honorary thing. It's an honorific thing. It's not really the two shvatim. We still maintain that they may be considered as one shevet for bringing the korban of the pau, the one. And Levi is also one. It's only a covered thing, like the president today or the Queen of England, with all due respect, Leilu Nishma's husband. It's only an honorary thing, right? You agree? She doesn't have real power. Yeah, she's not whoever. She's not Boris. And therefore, lavdil, the Nisim is a covered thing. It doesn't mean that they're really considered as separate shvatim. The Tanya, and look at the proof over here. It says, Shloimo also Shiva Yemei Chanukah. Shlomo, who built Beis HaMikdash, the magnificent, amazing building, Kodesh, of what? Of the first Beis HaMikdash. How many days of Chanukah Sabayis did he have? He had seven and seven. He had 7 days prior to Sukkot. He had 7 days that were exclusively only there for Chanukah Sabayis. 7 days of amazing holy partying away in a holy way of 7 days, including Yom Kippur of what? Of Chanukah Sabayis. The other 7, Rabbi, were Sukkot, which is anyway a holiday, and they added a korban. But the 7 days dedicated only for Chanukah Sabayis, his inauguration party was 7 days only. Why is it Moshe Rabbeinu had 12 days? The Mishkan was smaller than the Mikdash. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu party away, Kivyochol, 12 days? Why more? Why 7? Why 12? Again, he didn't want to shame any Shevet because he wanted to give cover to the Nisim. He made those extra 6 days, and he said all 12 should have the Nisim. Each one brought a korban starting from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Each day a different Shevet, including Ephraim and Menashe, each one brought. But again, we still maintain here, we're not maintaining anything. We are now questioning. Let's summarize. We have a question which was derived, which we were schlepped into because of the question between Abaye and of Yosef. Remember, what did we say? Let's summarize. Abaye and of Yosef both know one thing. Everyone knows that Rabbi Shimon knows that if, Rabbi Shimon holds, that if the bull of Beis HaMikdash that belongs to the Kohanim ran away, got lost, and then they got kapara from a different korban, and they found it again, what do we say? Then we say that we don't let the korban die. It's considered as if the tzibur didn't die. Therefore, the chatas doesn't die. We see the kohanim are called the tzibur. The kohanim are called the kahal. They're called the kahal. Now, the question was, do you reflect from kohanim being called kahal also in Beis Din? Do you also say Beis Din, which are a similar closed group of a few people together? Are they also considered as kahal? And therefore, if one of them dies, the show must go on and bring the korban? Or do we say no? No. They're considered stam. Rav Yosef says, mapitom. They're considered as stam regular people. Mapitom. And therefore, if one of them died, the others, don't bring the korban. Like you said, it's like one organ died, the whole body died. That's Rav Yosef. Okay? Now the question was, do we say there's a gzer sakosov that they're called kahal, or they do just represent any group? That's why we try to bring it from Menashe and Ephraim. Do we say that the Kohanim and Levim are called kahal because the Torah prescribes it, or do we just say any big group are called kahal and they are all for one for all, and the show must go on? That's a question. And we did not resolve it yet. Because we can always look at Ephraim and Menashe like really having two Shvatim, and then Levi is not called Kahal, or do we say no? Menashe and Ephraim are really considered one, and only for specific things like Nesim and Golim to consider this two. My Havi Allah. The Gemara is asking the question we're all asking. No, what's the maskana? What is the halacha? My Havi Allah. What else did we discuss about it? What was the conclusion of the discussion between Abaye and Rabbi Yosef? Who is right? Who is right? Can we say that the Brisa was authored by Rosh Shimon or not? Toshma, line starts with the Tanya. Yeah, we are a few lines, we are good few lines before the end of the Perek. Guys, we're finishing the Perek today. Shh. We are now about to finish the Perek, the Tanya. What I said before the introduction is coming back to us now. Rabbi Shimon says the following. Yeah, it's a Brisa, and I think it's a mission also in Tmura. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Chamesh Chatois Meisos. There's a halacha l'Shim Sinai. There are 5 cases in which a chatos dedicated by a person, and then something happened. There are 5 cases where chatos has to naturally die without being brought to Beis HaMikdash. What are the 5 cases? Count them. 1 is Vlad Chatos. Vlad Chatos. A person, an individual, what is the gender brought of sheep that's brought by an individual that ate dam by mistake or did something by mistake? Female, very good. You're on the ball today. Your wife gets a note, the big one. Vlad Chatos, Mazel Tov, the Chatos had a baby. Oh, it's not such a Mazel Tov, it was Mazel Ra. You know why? Because now the baby is nishter. It has the kedusha of the mother, but it cannot be brought. It cannot be brought to Beis HaMikdash. So the little shepsel of the baby has to die naturally. Now, with Tmuras Chatos, what happens if the person broke halacha? Bad boy. The person says, this is the Chatos, I'm now switching the kedusha of this Chatos to another one. He wants to get rid. He actually wants to have that nice juicy sheep for a steak. He says this kedusha should be removed and now transferred into a different shepsale, a different one, even a nicer one. It's not going to work. You know what's going to happen? They're both going to be kadosh, and you did an avera. It's only going to mess you up more. You can't switch either or. Both get the kedusha. Now, what happens to the tmura, to the new chatos, which actually it will not be brought to Beis HaMikdash? Yeah, it's a child of, so to speak, your verbal sin. What do you do with it? Left to die, not to grace, to die. Number 3, what we have been discussing all the time, the chatas which the owner died. The chatas the 4th one, we also discussed, the chatas which the bailim were already miskaper with different korban, like it got lost and then you found it again after you've been already ticked, you're okay. And what's the 5th one? The chatas shavosh noso, too old. The guy's lazy, he did not bring it on time, and now the chatas is too old to be brought. A whole year passed by, can't bring it to the mizbech anymore, and now what do you do with it? You let it stay in a closed place until it dies. Okay, so those are the 5 chatos which have to die. Continues the Brisa, this is still Reb Shimon talking. Now, wait, let's finish, now let's pause now. All these 5 cases can happen to an individual chatos. What is the title of the shiur today? Individual versus tzibur. What happens if you have a communal chatos of many people together, such as Yom Kippur? Or such as a whole tzibur, a whole nation brings chatos also sometimes. Every Yom Tov, every Rosh Chodesh. Vlad chatos b'tzibur. Now, if you start scrutinizing and going to details one by one, all 5 cases, a Vlad Chatas can never ever happen in Tzibur. You cannot have a Tzibur, a nation, that have such a fluke, such a messed up case of a Chatas giving birth. You know why? Because even with today, with all the crazy technology, last time I checked, I don't know, maybe update me, every time I get some horror messages from the Western world, as far as I know, male cannot be pregnant and give birth to children. I hope that stays that way, for all of us. As far as I know, even today, that's a story. If so, she'ein tzibur mafrishin nekeva. A tzibur can never, actually, there's no chatas tzibur that is female. The only female chatas are the individual ones. A chatas tzibur is always male, right? Like the one that's brought every Yom Tov, Yom Kippur, v'chulei. yeah, on occasions, or the first day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, or then there's no such case. There's no pregnant Chatas Tzibur. And also, case number 2, the Tmura, the one that's brought one instead of the other, but gets the Kedush of the original one. I would call it the duplicate. The duplicate, yeah? You have one Chatas, you duplicated the Kedush of the other one. Also, there's no such thing in Tzibur. It just doesn't happen. You know why? She'en Tmura b'Tzibur. A Tzibur cannot do Tmura. Not only it's also, it's just not going to work. If, let's say, one person represents the entire community and he says, okay, on behalf of the entire nation of Israel, goes to Har Herzl, on behalf of everyone in Israel, I now decided the communal tzibur chatos of Yom Kippur, I'm transferring the Kedusha to another seir, which is not going to work. It's just stupidity, garnish, nothing. Okay, so those things just won't happen. There's no Vlad Chatas and no Tmuras Chatas, and because of the vow. Now, case number 3, a person can die. It sometimes happens people die, last time I checked. But can a tzibur everyone die? No. Even if they all do die, then they don't. We don't view the tzibur as a dead thing. She'ein tzibur mesim, because halachically, that is one thing everyone agrees on. I'm not talking about shutfim, about tzibur. If the entire nation, they don't die, and therefore what do we say? And because of the tzibur doesn't die. So 3 out of 5 cases technically cannot apply physically, technically, to the tzibur. Now comes the question, what about the remainder of the other 2 cases? We dealt with 3. Now we have 2 more. What about sheniskapru be'aleho? What happens, and that can happen, what happens if a chatas tzibur ran away to the desert before Rosh Chodesh, let's say, then they brought another seir Rosh Chodesh lechatos, and then the original one came back, bleeping away. What happens then? It technically can happen. Let's say that korban was schlepped a whole year until the tzibur brought it. Let's say the gizmo was lazy. Somebody that could happen. Lo shamanu. Those 2 cases. We don't know what would happen in those 2 cases in the tzibur. Would they die? Those chatois? Or do we say that they're going to graze or be brought? What's going to be the story? Yochol Yamusu? Would we say, by the way, Ellen, I don't know if I explained it well enough, to graze and to die naturally are 2 opposite cases. Most korbanos, as I said before and I'll say again, most korbanos, like Osham, let's say, it's a good example because it's another obligatory korban. If an Osham has this mess up, well, Osham is only male, but let's say an Osham was lost and found too late, yeah? What do you do with it now? An Osham has easy life. It grazes and grazes until what? Until eventually there will be some kind of blemish found in it. Once there's a blemish, it's automatically disqualified. Then you switch it with another korban and bring it to the mizbeach. As an oila, that's all different story. It's a whole story. Wait, the chatois have a much sadder fate. We put them in a closed room and they die naturally. Once the food is finished, they're finished. Not very nice, but that's what the Torah says to do. They die, and they're not being switched for another korban. They die, and that's it, finished. Get what I'm saying? There's no continuation of having the blemish and then switched and then this. They die, and end of story. Okay? Now, Yochel Yamusu, solitary confinement, exactly, yeah. Could be 3 out of 5 cases, just cannot happen in tzibur, right? Why? There's no pregnant korban b'tzibur, there's no tmura b'tzibur, and tzibur never dies. But what happens if the tzibur already got the kapara in a different way? What happens if the tzibur was lazy and did not bring the korban until the following year when it's too late? Would we say that the chatois die? Amarta, we should say the following: Yilmod sasum in mefurash. We should learn what we don't know from what we do know. What does that mean? You have 3 cases of tick, 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 and 2 cases of maybe, or variables of an X, I don't know. And we say, Ma matzinu, just like Bivlad Chatas, Utmos Chatas, Bishmesu Baleo, the first 3 cases, Beyochid Dvorim Amurim, Veloy Betzibur, just like the first 3 cases, only apply to an individual and not to the tzibur, not to the public, because it cannot. So too, the 2 questionable cases, the 2 mysterious cases, so to the last 2 cases, we would say, no, only a yochid, we say, if it happens to a yochid, the behema has to die, but if the tzibur, he doesn't die. Okay, sounds nice, but says the Gemara, hey, wait a second, that's illogical. V'chidonin efshar mishi efshar? Ma pitom? What does one have to do with the other? What does it have to do with the price of cheese? Zo I efshar mi efshar, efshar mishi efshar, which means those three cases, as I said time and again, it cannot happen. It just can't. There's no such thing. And because of the vow, it cannot happen. But the two cases, the letter cases, it may technically happen with tzibu. So why do you compare one to the other? I'll give an example. You have 5 neighbors in the building. 3 of them are very rich, and 2 are not rich. So we'd say, if the 3 bought BMW, let's say 3 rich. The 3 bought a very fancy BMW in Israel. It's a fancy car. Yeah, so for sure the other 2 also did. Mapitom, what's a kesha? The 3 guys are swimming in money, and the 2 guys barely make ends meet. What does one have to do with the other? Well, what kind of logic is that? You're going to tell me because those 3 guys have a new shiny first-hand BMW, so to the other 2 who barely make it to the bus? Well, what's the story? Why are you telling me these 3 are this, and therefore the other 2? Answers the Gemara, a very interesting answer, at the end of the Perek. Rabbi Shimon, Bechad Mokoim Gomir. Rabbi Shimon has a Mesoiro. Rabbi Shimon has, as opposed to the BMW people, Rabbi Shimon has a certain tradition that those 5 chatos, by the way, I did tell you before, those 5 chatos are halachically Shemesinai. Regularly, any other korban would be grazing until it gets a blemish, until this. The 5 chatos that die in a rather unpleasant way, they are halachim shemesinai. Look at my 5 fingers. They all, Baruch Hashem, stem from one stem, right? From one wrist, Baruch Hashem. Rabbi Shimon learned from his Rabbeim that those 5 chatos are all for one for all. Whatever happens to one happens to the other 5. Get me? It's true. As opposed to the neighbors, this is like communism. It's either all neighbors buy or no neighbor buys. The building decided we have to be nice and friendly, egalitarian, okay? If 2 people can't afford it, nobody affords it. Get what I'm saying? In my mashal. Same thing over here. Reb Shimon learned that the 5 chatois, either they all apply or they never apply. Mimela, obviously, Reb Shimon, what would he tell you? One individual, all 5 cases can apply. But at Tzibu, 3 cases technically can never happen. Therefore, the other 2 do not happen either. And what do you say? You say that really, they are not going to die. Those 5 chatois are going to graze and not die. And the same thing would be by shutfim. What are the korbanos of the shutfim? Let now close every little knot in the story. Which are the 2 cases where we have halachic groups of people, Beis Din and the Koyanim? In both cases, we're talking about male korbanos. So shutfim also, you can't have all 5 cases that the animal should die, because male cannot be pregnant. So the korbanos of the shutfim, Beis Din or Koyanim, are male. They cannot be pregnant. Therefore, and also, there's no tmura. And therefore, what do we say? Aha, you know who's the winner? And the winner is Abaye. Abaye was right. Why? Real Reb Shimon believes that the korban of the shutfim is a korban that's considered not like the yochid. And that korban does not die. The korban does not die. And therefore, the Mishnah cannot be Rabbi Shimon. Our brisa that said that the Beis Din are peturim, not true. The Beis Din are at Sibul. They should be chayavin to bring it. They're like a whole nation that never dies, Am Yisrael Chai. And therefore, they shouldn't be able to bring it further. They are not like the Yochid. They're considered as a big group like a whole nation. Shutfim and Sibur and Kahal all. And therefore, if the Brisa says that they're potu, nisht. That cannot be Reb Shimon, just like Abai said. End of Perek. Mirz Hashem, tomorrow, new Perek. You can memorize, revise. It's going to be all today in the intranet. And therefore, Be'ez Hashem, you can review today's shiur. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.